You are now tuned in to the GNWY podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the GNWY podcast, where purpose and people come together. And today we have none other than Jackie Huffman. Go ahead and make some noise for Jackie. So you're an amazing person. Thank you so much for coming through to this episode and this podcast. So first of all, we'll do the whole introduction. Jackie Huffman, you are Teacher of the Year of Edmond North High School. Yeah,
2022 Teacher of the Year.
Yes. Okay. So I mean, that's just a slight flex on everybody, you know. So how did you, for one, become a Teacher of the Year? What set you apart from all the other teachers? If you can go ahead and...
Well, you know, I've been at Edmond North now for 18 years. This was my 18th year. And I think a lot of what people noticed this year and past 2 years is me being more visible at the school.
Yeah.
Being out there, talking to kids, dealing with the yearbook, and really trying to be there for our students because of COVID. I mean, it was really rough. 2020 and going into 2021 school year was rough. And so it was one of those things where, as a person, I needed to be more visible for my kiddos. Yeah. And so I think teachers saw that, they appreciated that. And so hopefully that was what motivated them to vote for me. Either that or I've been there for 18 years and they're like, let's just give it to her.
She really made it. Goodness. That's amazing. I think that, I mean, for one, we met whenever we were, Generation Y was chosen for the Philanthropy Week of Edmond North, which shout out to y'all. Y'all are amazing. Woo, Thank you so much for that. And like Generation Y is obviously, you know, pushes mental health and all that. And so whenever we met, you connected really well. You were this vibrant teacher that was like, oh my gosh, I love what y'all are doing and all this stuff. And we're like, thank you. Somebody gets it.
Yeah.
And so whenever we saw that, we were like, you know, we've got to connect with Jackie Huffman. So what connected you so much with like the mission of Generation Y?
Well, you know, I think when you deal with students on a daily basis, we tend to find out parts of their life that even sometimes their parents don't know about. And mental health right now is such a huge concern, especially for anybody, not just for kids, but for anyone right now. And the fact that we're seeing states around the country decrease the amount of funding for mental health, I think we're seeing right now the effects of that with the Texas school shooting. The idea of, you know, someone who needed help, someone missed the signs there. And so for me as a teacher, I look at when a kid walks into my classroom, I can tell there's something on their mind just by the way they walk in with the weight on their shoulders. And so for us to be able to provide some type of service outside of just the normal counseling, which is awesome. Yeah. And Edmond Public Schools does a wonderful job of doing that by having great counselors, but also giving us, individuals to speak with, different psychiatrists and things like that. Yeah. But you guys are out there making connections with kids one-on-one in a way that most of us as teachers cannot, because we're just not that cool, let's be honest.
No. Jackie, that is definitely not true.
Well, I cannot do the dances that you guys do.
I'm sure that y'all break out in your classroom, right?
Oh yeah, we do a little, but not like you guys do. You know?
Excellent. That's awesome. And that's the thing too, is like, and you brought up the shooting and everything like that. Like this whole concept, and I start to see like the word mental health being thrown around quite a bit, and I feel like, I don't know if it's actually being received as like fully what it is. I feel like we're normalizing it to where it's just a part of the regular day conversation and everything, or just lumping it into like, oh, that's just a mental health thing or whatever. But I feel like some people aren't grasping what mental health really is. No. And I feel like as you're a perfect representation of, you know, getting through a lot. And so I don't know if you want to go into like some of your transformation stuff, but you used to, you know, how go into that.
Well, 2 years ago, I weighed 365 pounds and was told by my doctor that I had basically, I was a walking heart attack. He said 2 years max before you have some major health issues. And he said, you're going to have to make a decision. Do you want to survive, or do you want to die probably on a cardiac table having some kind of surgery done? And, you know, you look at your life, what is it worth to you? And for a long time, I didn't think it was worth that much. But then you start to look at the people that you keep around you. You know, I have a niece and nephew. I have a father. I have a sister. I have kids in my classroom who depend on me. Right. And I had to make a decision. Is that enough to spur me on to do what I need to do? Yeah. And it was, obviously. And so when I made that decision, I went to a doctor and said, what do I do? How do I fix this? Because I've fought this for 30 years.
Yeah.
And when he gave me the coping mechanisms and the tools to make the changes that I needed to make, it worked. It made sense. But I had to go to a professional to get that help.
Yeah.
Take that away from someone. Take the access to professional help away from someone. And what do you have? You have someone who's in a situation they are not equipped to handle.
Right.
And they lose their life. They suffer medical issues, things of that nature. And I acquaint that transformation. Now I'm 190 pounds down.
Congratulations.
Yes.
That is wild.
Yeah.
You said you pretty much, in our last talk that we had at the school, you said you pretty much lost a whole person, right?
Yes. That's an entire human being.
That is wild. Yeah.
In fact, I have guy friends that weigh 190 pounds. Wow. So I lost basically a guy.
right. Yes. Congratulations.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
But you look at that, that's not just weight though. Yeah. There are a lot of mental stumbling blocks that you still go through when you do something like that. Yeah. And like I just told you, there are some counseling issues that I'm working through to deal with the idea of what does that mean when you lose that kind of weight?
Right.
Because I still see myself as that 365-pound woman.
Right.
Whereas I know that in my mind, on part of my mind, I know that that's not the case. Mm-hmm. But the other side of me is like, yeah, well, but that's how you've been for so long. So, there's a lot of things that go into that. Yeah. You take that counseling ability, or you take that tool away from someone who's not just going through weight loss, but someone who's dealing with legitimate mental health issues such as like bipolar or schizophrenia or even depression. And you take that away from them. How are they going to survive that? Mm-hmm. And then we start to question, well, why did they do what they did? Yeah. Well, hello.
Definitely.
You took away the tools that they needed.
Definitely.
And we have to destigmatize that. We have to destigmatize mental health, know. And I know a lot of, I'm a preacher's kid, Baptist preacher's kid. Yeah. I will always say that God first. I will always say that. Yeah. But, I'm also going to say, you need to be able to talk to somebody. You need to be able to have tools besides just your own faith, because God provided that in the first place.
Definitely. So. And like you were saying too, like until you actually reached out for help, even in that time where some people are wanting help, but they don't have it yet, that still feels so alone. And that's where a lot of people are kind of stuck in that rut. They don't know where to reach out to. They don't know where to reach out to, or how to even find these resources and everything. And so like, how was it even for you to reach out to, finding the right person to help you or anything like that? Like, was that a struggle, or was that like you had to put your pride down and be like, you know what I'm saying?
A little bit of everything.
What was that?
Well, I'm lucky that I have a great support unit in my family. Yeah. And my sister was the one that said, hey, there's this doctor in Edmond. You need to talk to him. Yeah. And I said, are you for real on that? And she said, what else are you going to do? She's like, you have nothing to lose. And I said, you know what? You're right. And so when I called him,
your life.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Or the weight, one or the other.
Ooh, either lose the weight or lose your life.
There
what do you want to do?
Yeah. I chose to lose the weight. But,
that's fire.
So I called him, made an appointment, and he is Cajun. He's from Louisiana, and he's no nonsense.
Right.
And he put it to me in probably the most basic sense ever. He said, look, I talk to thousands of people a year. And he said, out of every 5 that I talk to, one, because I chose to do gastric bypass, one makes it to surgery. He said, out of every 5 that make it to surgery, one keeps it off for 2 years. Out of every one of those, one.
Out of how many?
Out of 5. So if you're looking at, wild. 1 out of 5 makes it for 2 years. He said, out of every 5 of those that make it to 2 years, he said one possibly keeps it off for life. He said the odds on that are much lower. He said it's more like 0.25%.
What is that reason for that?
Well, you get to feeling really good. You start looking really good. And then you start going back to old habits. If you didn't make a change, like if you did not change your lifestyle, you just did it. It's kind of like kids studying for a test. Yeah. They study for the test. They don't retain it.
And forget it all later. Yeah.
So you had to, as far as this process is, you have to make a lifestyle change, as with anything. And so when I did this, I decided it was a lifestyle not just a quick fix.
Yeah.
And so everything about my life has changed. You know, I get up at 6:00 every morning and I'm out the door walking.
Yeah.
This morning, let's check.
I saw your story. You were
Yes.
already up and at 'em.
I was already up and at 'em.
Yeah.
And so this morning I did a 5.14 mile walk
That's awesome.
at 6. And that's every day I do that, because that is my way of making sure that I don't fall back where I'm going. And that's an accountability for me.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I walked at the school during my plan period. But
Yeah.
this is so much better because I've got hills and all of that.
Yeah.
But that's my accountability. And
Yeah.
that's my way of saying, I don't want to go back to that. And I keep pictures of myself on my phone.
Yeah.
So those days when I don't want to get out of bed,
Right.
or if it's raining and I don't want to go to my brother-in-law's gym and go get on the elliptical,
Yeah.
I remind myself, look how far you've come.
Right.
Don't go back.
Yeah.
So, you know.
That's amazing. And so even now that you are where you're at now, like even with the mental health, do you feel like those things kind of creep in, like with the, you know what, I can go ahead and just slack off, or, I can just
For
whatever.
real. For sure.
All the time?
All the time. It's like, you know, I call myself a food addict because, you know, we deal with addiction. And when we think of addiction, we think of drugs and alcohol, things like that. And those are the ones that everybody always, you know, talks about with addiction.
Right.
But addiction comes in a lot of different forms. And you can be addicted to food. And that is one of the things that I went to group therapy for, was because that was my problem.
Yeah.
If you use food as your coping mechanism, which is what I did, then you don't have any healthy ways to cope with problems.
Yeah.
And so I had to make a conscious decision as to how I was going to process that.
Yeah.
And so for me, there are new coping mechanisms. You know, walking is my new coping mechanism. I do a lot of crocheting.
Okay.
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I do. I'll have to make a GNWY blanket for y'all.
Oh, hey, do not tempt us with a good time. Yes. That's amazing.
But that is what keeps my mind and my body engaged in different things. Hands, you know, working so that you're not going to the kitchen. You're going to do something much more productive. And so it really does become the idea of what choices you're going to make.
Yeah.
And I chose my family and my life over, you know, old habits.
Yeah.
And for me, that works because I have a great support unit. But what if people don't have a great support unit? How do you help them?
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely. Even with like going into the mental health aspect of you actually now, not now, but like you've been a teacher for 18 years. And so like, you know, seeing these kids from day to day, and like you said that you see them walk in with so much heaviness and everything. Like how do you even deal with them right then and there with that small time frame and period of, you know, I don't know, 45 minutes of a class time? How do you deal with those kids being able to still teach, but then still be able to dig down into whatever they're dealing with in that moment?
I think one of the things is you have to know as a teacher instinctively when you need to stick with curriculum and when you can go off road. And a lot of times what I find myself doing is I will just ask everybody, how are we doing today? Let's do a quick check-in. How are we doing? And because beginning of the year, I try to foster this relationship with them that I tell them there's nothing you can say in here that will probably surprise me.
Right.
Just remember, if you say something about harming yourself or someone else, I've got to report it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I always do a disclaimer, but I tell them, you know, curriculum comes and goes. We'll always get to what we need to, but if you need to talk, this is your spot to talk.
Definitely.
And so sometimes, especially after things like the Texas school shooting, had we been in school right now, that would have been something we would have talked about.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because, you know, and you probably saw I did a post about how every teacher goes into a classroom every single day. And the first thing you think of is, how do I protect these kids?
Yeah.
How do I make sure this room is as secure as possible? And you go through scenarios in your mind of if someone comes in, because I have 2 doors to my room. You've seen my room. It's a huge room.
Right.
I have two doors. How do I protect kids with 2 doors?
Right.
And, you know, in order for us to process that, if that's heavy for me, then I know that's going to be hard for them. And so sometimes you just have to stop and go, okay, guys, where are we at today? Especially if you see kids walking in just looking like there's a lot going on there.
Right.
Sometimes they'll tell it in a group setting. Sometimes you take them, you know, you get everybody started on something and you say, hey, let's go outside. Let's go out in the hallway for a sec. And I just say to them, what's going on?
Yeah.
I can tell something's going on. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Or do you need to go talk to someone else about it? And 9 times out of 10, they'll tell me.
Yeah.
Because we have that kind of a relationship, and they know that if they're going to tell me something, I'm going to try my best to help them.
Yeah.
But for that, every 9 kids that tell me, that one kid, that's the one I worry about the most.
Right, right.
And so that's where I will do a quick email to it. I'll look up who their counselor is, and I'll do a quick email and say, hey, so-and-so's walking kind of low today.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to call them and find out what's going on. They didn't
Yeah.
want to talk to me about it, which is totally fine.
Right.
But someone needs to talk to them.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at right now with the Texas shooting is someone had to know something was going on, Jordan.
Right. Definitely.
Someone had to know.
The crazy thing for me is like, I guess that, I mean, from what I've read is and seen is that, you know, he was being bullied in the high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he went into an elementary school.
Why?
I didn't know what that was about, but maybe it was more accessible or something like that. But I don't, it just blows my mind too of like people being able to see this kid all the time and probably even hearing that he's being bullied. And what are the steps and actions even in that way?
Well, and even
You know?
social media.
Right.
He posted on social media,
Right.
watch what I do with these.
Right.
So where's the accountability for Facebook and Instagram and all of those
Right.
where, you know, during the 2020 election, people said things, we called it Facebook jail. You got put in Facebook jail, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So where was the accountability for that?
Right.
When that kid posted that?
Yeah.
That's my question is there are so many signs after the fact that people missed.
Right.
And, you know, COVID has changed the way we live our lives now.
Yeah.
We are so disconnected from one another. I'm a people person, so I just
Right.
get in people's business. You know that.
Right,
I'm going to get
yeah,
right
yeah.
in your face and go, what's
Definitely.
going on?
Right.
But not everybody is. And so for someone who is in that scenario that he's in or he was in, and for no one to step up and say, hey, this kid's struggling.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
a grandma lost her life. 21 kids and a teacher lost their lives.
Right.
You know, there are 21 families right now who are planning funerals or have planned funerals, and they're trying to figure out, how do I wake up the next day without my loved one?
So sad. Yeah.
So, you know, as a teacher, that hits me. And it makes me wonder, you know, what if, and I'm not saying I'm the best teacher in the world, but if I would have had that kid in class, would I have been able to notice that?
Right. Yeah.
You know, because I would like to think that there was a teacher there at some point that said, we got to report this. Like, there's something going on with this kid. I would love to think that. But so far, I haven't seen anything in the media about that.
Right.
Not saying that that's bad. I'm saying there's a lot going on down there, you know. But that should be a wake-up call to everyone in our country.
Definitely.
It's time to start getting off the cell phones, getting off of our own individual lives, and start looking at the world around us and start saying, hey, that person, I don't know that person, but they look like they need a, you know, a fist bump, or they need someone to say, hey, are you okay today?
Right. And
until I think we see people doing that on the daily, I think you're going to continue to see people really just disconnect. And that is scary to me, because we're raising an entire generation that has lived through COVID and has been told, don't touch people, don't get too close, you know, stay disconnected as much as possible if you want to stay safe. And that's scary.
And I saw the news, there's a news article, they were interviewing, I guess, either the grandma or the mom or something like that. And they were, or somebody, because I guess didn't he shoot his...
He shot his grandma in the face.
Right, before he even went in. So there was somebody that, I don't know who it was. It might have been his mom or aunt or something like that. But they were saying that he had his reasons, which makes me think that it's definitely like a mental health issue. So it's like, we definitely have this type of stigma around mental health that we are not diagnosing in the proper way at all. And so even with you, because it seems like it comes naturally to you to be able to talk to kids and, you know, get them to open up and everything. Why is it so hard for some other teachers or parents or anything to actually ask these hard questions?
Well, I think some of it is, you know, I don't have kids. I don't have kids of my own.
Right.
So I have a lot more energy to expend on other people's children. But if you think about teachers who are also parents, they are not only dealing with their own kids, but they're dealing with 125 if they're teaching high school of other people's kids, or if they're in elementary, they've got their class of kids that they're wiping noses and everything else.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I can understand how a lot of people who are being pulled in different directions may not expend as much energy. But then I've also seen some really good teachers who have their own children who just envelop other kids into their lives.
Right.
And I think it's a choice. Do you want to connect with kids? Do you want to connect with other people? Or do you want to say, I came for the paycheck, I came to do the job, I'm out the door when the bell rings.
Yeah.
And if that's what you're in education for, you're not in it for the right reasons. You need to find another job, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think Oklahoma, this is your wake-up call to start looking at how you treat teachers. You know, and I don't like to get on that soapbox, but you know I'm going to.
Say it. We about to say it today. Yes.
You know, when we look at professional athletes and we pay them millions of dollars to entertain us, but yet we say to teachers, you're not worth $50,000 a year starting out.
Yeah.
You're not worth helping you to pay for ongoing education, but we want you to do ongoing education. We want you to have master's degrees,
right?
But we're not going to pay for it. And then you expect us to pay for it on our own dime. What message are you sending kids? Right. Oh, you're sending kids and parents the message that teachers are not good enough to be treated with the amount of respect that I think
deserve.
They deserve.
Yeah,
you know?
Definitely.
But yet you're going to send your kid to me, and you want me to educate them, but yet you don't respect me. Now, that does not make sense to me. Does it make sense to you?
Definitely not. Definitely. Y'all literally have like one of the hardest jobs, I would say, because like not only because even whenever, you know, COVID happened and then all the kids had to stay home, there was so many parents freaking out because they were like, oh, now I got to parent my kid. What do I do? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so like you guys are initially not only, you know, y'all are caretakers for our kids. You are teaching education. You are teaching them life skills. You're teaching them literally everything. But at the same time, y'all are being thrown at so many different things. Hey, put this in your curriculum. Hey, do this at the time block and the fitting everything around. Like you have so many things that you have to adapt to, you know, with this whole system of the school education system. And it's like, how is the mental health even being pushed for these teachers?
That's a good question. When we had last year's school year, the 2020, whatever the last year was, not this year, last year. We had the AB schedule in Edmond. And so I had half my class on Monday, Tuesday. I had the other half on Thursday, Friday. Yeah. And I remember at the beginning of the school year, Edmond Public Schools said, we have resources for all teachers to deal with mental health issues. And it was
like phenomenal. To help other students?
No,
or
to help teachers.
Okay.
No, we had access to counseling.
That's awesome.
And things like that. Now, I didn't feel the need to use it. Right. But if I would have wanted to, it was there, free.
That's awesome.
And it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And we thought that was going to be our survive year. But you know what? People gave us a lot of grace that year because everybody knew we were pivoting as much as possible. Yeah. This year, though, you want to talk about needing some mental health counseling for a lot of teachers, but yet that was not as available this year. Really? Because we were supposed to be back to normal. So everybody's supposed to go back to what we've always done. Yeah. And I think this was more the survival year than last year was because we had less grace given to us by parents and by society as a whole. But yet we had fewer resources and we were still expected to be doing all of the same things we did last year for students, making sure everything's on Canvas, making sure that everything is accessible from home because you still got kids going home for COVID. And so when you have a scenario like that where you've been given grace and then you come back and everything is 10 times harder because now you've got them 5 days a week. Right. Plus you're still doing all the stuff that you did before. Plus you still have all these protocols to deal with and you have less resources for your own personal mental health. It does become challenging. And there were times where I think had I not had the support unit of my sister, my best friend, you know, family, things like that, I think it could have broke someone. Definitely. That will break you. And it depends on how you're able to get through something like that. I definitely think that everyone thinks that they can do our job. And I've definitely been told that.
Really? And by parents and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I pay your salary. If I hear that one more time, I want $100. I'm telling you guys right now, I want $100 for every time I hear that.
Give this woman $100. Yes.
But I mean, I've literally heard, you know,
I can do your job.
I can do your job. You teach English. Everybody speaks it. Okay. yeah, everybody speaks it really poorly most of the time, but
right.
you know,
Yeah.
not that I'm judging, but you know, I went
Judge
to
away,
I went to
yes.
8 years of school to do what I do. I
Yeah.
have 2 bachelor's and a master's degree.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm any better than anyone else because of that. I just know that that's what I wanted to do for myself.
Right.
So don't sit there and tell me you can do my job,
Right.
because I go into it with my heart and my soul for my kids, because
Right.
I feel like they deserve the very best of what I have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I am not on my game, I make sure I go figure out how to get myself back.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that drive, but that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
And so I you know, if I can tell a parent who's listening to this podcast one thing, it's give your teacher some grace.
Yeah, definitely. Because you've even told us a couple of instances where, you know, some parents have been wild to you. I don't know if you want to go into that one where you were saying that, you know, you went up to a parent talking about their student, or I guess you were in a counselor's office, right? And then you were saying to this parent, hey, if you want to deal with this kid and figure out what's wrong with him, if not, then, you know, you may be burying your kid
That's
in
right.
the next 2 weeks.
That's right.
So, like, what was that whole situation like?
Well, the student was having some major mental health issues.
Yeah.
There were just and, you know, I don't want to say too much because
Right.
obviously that's confidential.
Yeah.
But, you know, if a teacher is looking at a student and saying, okay, we have a problem, and then you go to the parent and say, look, your child needs some help.
Yeah.
Okay, you need some help. And they say, well, no, they'll be fine.
And what was the phrase that they said about mental health? Like, my kid doesn't need this because
It's
mental
fake.
health is
It's fake. It's, you know, basically it was like fake news and
Right.
things like that. And I just remember thinking, he said, this is just a racket. This is just to get people to pay tons of money to someone to hear themselves talk. It's not going to help anyone.
wow.
And I said, okay. I said, well, you either can let your kid talk to someone, pay however much money, let them hear themselves talk if
Right.
that's what they need, or you can be planning a funeral.
Right.
Because regardless of whether you think your child needs this or not, your child thinks he needs it.
Right.
And you're either going to get that student what he needs, or you're going to be thinking afterwards, I wish
Right.
I would have done what my student needed.
Even with this whole shooting thing, everybody's probably saying, I wish I would have saw these signs and these signs. So getting back into the aspect of a parent not recognizing these signs and how important it is with this whole concept of mental health. And you were going into you being able to recognize these signs as a teacher, and that one specific story that you were talking about, this student, I just, with my whole, I cannot fathom that whole concept of not being able to recognize these signs. But even you've showed us a couple of stories where, you know, a parent that was a therapist, you know, and she didn't even recognize signs.
Well, because you don't think about it with your own child.
Right.
You know, you're so trained to look at other people's children that you sometimes forget about your own child. And I think a lot of people, you know, there's a certain amount of hubris there as a parent. You know, I know I'm doing a good job. I'm making sure my kid's fed. They get to school on time. They have clothes and all of that.
Right.
But, and for a lot of people, they're struggling to get that done because, you know, life is so frantic. But what I've noticed sometimes where I live, you know, Edmond Guthrie area is, you know, there's a lot of, well, I don't want anybody to know that we have this going on in our lives.
Right.
Because it's all about appearances. What we
Right.
put on social media is projecting how wonderful our lives are and
Right.
everything's fantastic. We take these great trips. My kids are doing wonderful things in school. But what we're not saying is what cost. At what cost are you making your child pay to be in that sport or to go on that trip?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And in order for you to be able to be okay with that, then you have to ignore those signs. Otherwise, then you have to admit maybe you're not doing what's best for your child.
Right. Right.
And a lot of people don't want to do that because think about how many parents are living vicariously through their kids.
Definitely. Yes. And they're willing to spend like you were even saying, they're willing to spend this much money for activities that we may not even know that this kid wants. Right. And then we're willing to pay all this money to go on a vacation, all this kind of stuff, but we're not willing to pay
$50.
for a therapy session. Or for them to even talk things out. Like what are we gonna do? What is this? We're literally gonna wait until the very last minute for us to be like, oh, now it's bad. No, it's been bad. No, it's been bad.
Your kid just wrote a suicide note to a teacher
Right.
in a paper.
Yes.
And that teacher came and told you, hey, your kid just wrote this letter to me. What are we going to do? And that's when you say, oh, maybe I need to get some help.
Right.
You know, prior to that, that kid has... prior to that, I lost it there, man. You need to get some sleep, bud.
It's good background noise, though.
We feel for you, though. We feel for you. I get up at 3:30 every morning. I just want you to know that.
And she's here.
And here I am.
Wide awake.
Well, that Starbucks helps out a lot.
That's
Starbucks,
hilarious.
can I get some money for that? No.
Yes, sponsorship.
But I think if we're going to be honest, let's be honest here. Do we really want people to know that we're having mental health issues? Because then that changes the way they look at us.
Yeah.
You know, I have dealt with my own issues as far as depression and just having to identify some things in my own life where I realized I was not okay.
Yeah.
And when you have to look at that's a dark tunnel to look down. And if you're not careful, you may never come back out of it.
Yeah.
And because like I said, I keep saying this, I have great support units. I have people that I can talk to.
Yeah.
But for those who don't, or for those kids whose parents are saying, this is fake. This is not real. You are making this up. You are trying to get attention. We've got our attention now. We'll make sure that you're so busy you won't have time to be depressed.
Right.
Okay, that's not what the kid's saying either.
Right.
What they're telling you is they are having problems. It's time to get someone who is removed from the situation in. And, you know, I'm not saying that mental health counselors are the only people. You know, what about your church? You know, for me, my faith is what I build everything on.
Yeah.
You know, God is the first step in my life.
Yeah.
So when I start to have problems or issues or start to deal with tackling something in my life, that's the first place I go.
Right.
But, you know, there's nothing wrong with going and talking to someone else too.
Definitely.
And getting some outside help from someone who's removed from the situation.
And even with the whole thing of like parents that are, I would say like in a sense, like putting them in so many other things is still once again like pawning them off onto somebody else.
Are we really dealing with the problem?
And that's my whole question to some parents is like, are you even parenting your kid? Are you? It's not even parenting of like discipline. It's the parenting of being present. That's the whole thing that like blows my mind of like, do you care about your kid that you just even want to be there? You know, like, are you so like disconnected through whatever you're doing, you know, through your job or, you know, your own goals and aspirations and stuff like that. And that's fine to have, but it's like, you also decided to have a kid. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that should also be your first aspiration and priority. Right. So like, that's that we can go on a whole thing about parents it's like, but
they do have a hard job. And I'm not, because I'm not a parent.
Right.
You know, I don't want to say that, you know, I know what they're going through, but I know with my own sister, I watch my sister and my brother-in-law parent their kids and they have their kids in each of them have an activity and they only have one because they don't want to overload them. But I watch my sister and brother-in-law sit down and talk to their kids every night at the dinner table. They eat dinner at the dinner table every night. And they say, tell me what happened at school. Tell me what your friends are doing. What are the kids watching on TV?
Even if
like
they
that.
don't want to talk. They need that time.
Yes, they do.
You know?
And my niece and nephew have become very accustomed to being able to tell us anything. And we've had some situations come up from the school that, you know, they had to go in and talk to teachers about and say, hey, this is going on. Did you know that?
Right.
Had they not had those open lines of communication with my niece and nephew, they would have never known. Definitely. And that would have continued. And how, you know, they're 7 and 5 right now.
Yeah.
Allow that to continue going on into high school, where you have kids now who are hiding from their parents what's really going on because they know that nothing's going to happen anyway. Yeah. And it's easier to hide it than to deal with it because, you know, they don't want to know anyway. No, that's your job, parents. That's your job. I call them accessory kids.
Yes, we're about. I was gonna get it. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
You know, if we remember, and I'm old enough to remember the whole Paris Hilton carrying the dog around in the
Right.
little bag.
Yeah.
The dog became an accessory. And it wasn't really about the dog. It was about what that dog added to her appearance. Okay, I've watched people have children because that was simply the next step in their life. It wasn't because they wanted kids.
Right.
It's because that was what you did. That was the next phase. And my sister and brother-in-law waited till they were older to have kids because they wanted to make sure that when they had them, they were ready to spend the amount of time they were going to need to.
Yeah. Definitely.
And for that mindset to become more pervasive, you have to have people thinking about, why am I having kids? Why am I wanting to do this? Is it because your friends are all having kids and you love picking out the cute little clothes and having all the little cute little gender reveal parties and all of that? Or is it because at the end of the day, you sit back and you look at that little person that you've made, you know, with another person that you love, and you go, man, I really brought something good into this world. It's my job to protect it. It's my job to make sure that nothing happens that they are not prepared to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's real. And that whole concept, even whenever you were explaining it to us the last time that we were doing an interview for, was it the
yearbook?
Yes.
Yeah.
So like that whole, whenever you brought up the whole accessory kids, blew my mind because I haven't heard somebody, you know, describe it like that. So good job to you. Yeah,
hey.
Good job. But like that whole concept to me, it for real makes sense because everybody looks at Instagram, social media, and they're even just to get into a relationship. Everybody is looking at, okay, what's the next step? Okay, do we take the time to do that? Nobody's thinking about those things. They just want what somebody else has got. You know, somebody thinking like, oh, I'm getting bored in my relationship, so let's just go have a kid.
Let's spice it up a little.
Let's spice it up. That's not spicing anything up. That's draining some energy. So work on your own self before you move to the next step. Like that whole concept just blows my mind of people just not having patience enough with their partner to be able to become a parent yet.
Right.
And so, so that whenever you said that, I was like, whoa, let's go. That needs to be a thing for sure. That whole concept for real needs to be like talked about because like, your kid, you're creating a living human being. Why do you want that just to be a side thing? Like it's a side hobby.
It should never be a side hobby.
That's your full-time gig. You know, I grew up with two parents that were definitely involved and they, you know, I'm the only one, so they poured all the energy into me. So, but you know what I'm saying? Like they legit sacrificed a lot to be able to, you know, have a kid. And we didn't have a whole lot, you know, growing up and stuff like that. But I knew that I was loved. So I felt like I had everything, you know. And so like, but there's so many kids out there that do not grow up with that, that do not have that type of attention. And like that is so sad to me because like that's what is wrong with the world and the next generation coming up is because like a tablet's gonna be your parent now.
Yep.
A teacher's gonna be your parent now. Somebody else, your coach that is at your, you know, football games now, you know, and then you just pop in every once in a while to give them a good high five. What?
Or get after the person that's trying to help you raise them.
Exactly. Yes.
Don't come after me if you don't like what I'm doing if you're not present.
Or if you're not doing it yourself.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm never going to try to parent someone's child, you know, on my own. But if I see a child who needs something from me, I'm sorry, I'm not going to walk away from that.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I think that y'all's job is so important. And our kudos to all y'all's teachers. Even the ones that may, you know, not be as cool as you, you know, there are, you know, some teachers out there that are still, you know, going through it and being as good as they can, you know. But like for people and teachers that are like you, like that, I can name off probably 2 or 3 handfuls of teachers that impacted my life greatly. And now I'm able to do what I'm doing because of those teachers and those words that I remember. My 5th grade teacher, she knew that I sucked at reading, okay, and that my attention was the worst, okay, and so she knew that and she navigated that just for me. So she like put me into the side and put this like barricade around me, and she was like, I know that like you just need to focus whenever you're doing these tests because I know you can do it. but like you're just not able to do that around all these other people. And so like just stuff like that. Miss Gandy, I remember vividly. 5th grade. How do I remember 5th grade? You know? And then like I think 6th or 8th grade, Miss Rhodes, like same thing. Reading teacher, English teacher, same thing. I think English teachers are the best. I don't know what it is.
I'm going to be biased and say yes, but I will tell you there are tons of teachers out there that are teaching math, science, coaching, that truly, those coaches, I'm gonna brag on coaches a little.
Go for it, yes.
Because I think sometimes we give them a bad rap. You know, my brother-in-law is a coach. He coaches football. He coaches track, you know, but he doesn't just coach the sport. He coaches the whole kid.
Yeah.
And his number one rule is honor on and off the field.
Yeah.
The way you act on the field should also be represented the way you act off the field.
Definitely.
And he has no problems pulling a kid off and going, you don't get to act that way.
Yeah.
And if he finds out that they're given a teacher fits, and I'm not ashamed to say I called him on that, I'd be like, hey, I got this kid, he's yours.
Right.
He will, you know, I've watched him take a kid by the helmet, the football helmet, bring him in close, and he'll be real intense with them, and he'll say something, and you'll see that kid's shoulders slump a little bit. Then he says something else to them, and he pumps them back up.
Yeah.
And then he'll tap them on the helmet and get them back out there.
Yeah.
And that kid needed that.
Definitely.
And he gave them what they needed. He gave them the discipline, but then he pumped them back up and said, now, here's what we're doing. You know what you're doing. Let's get back out there.
Definitely.
There are tons of coaches out there that do that on the daily, and we don't really think about that.
Yeah.
And, you know, even the teachers who aren't as animated and do all the song and dance that some of us do, because we're just extra. Jordan, I'm extra. I'm going to be honest.
I believe it.
I'm extra.
It. Yes.
It's that theater background. There are teachers out there, though, that are there every day teaching the subjects that most of us don't want to teach.
Yeah.
And they are doing it in a way that these kids are walking out the door and they're understanding it. They deserve the same amount of gratitude as someone who does what I do, where I show up for Hamlet dressed in a mask and going, alas, per Yorick, I do him well.
Yes.
You know, that's one of those things that works with my personality, but that's not what every kid needs.
Yeah.
And there are tons of kids who look at me and go, but then they go to other teachers who are more like they are, and that's who they gravitate towards. So you don't want every teacher being exactly the same.
Right. Exactly.
You want to be able to have a multitude of different teachers who can service a multitude of different kids, because we have so many different kids coming in.
Definitely.
And so, you know, yes, I like the way that I do things, but I also know that there are kids who, when they walked out of my class, they're like, man, she tired me out. I'm going to go to math now where it makes sense.
Yeah. Right. That's hilarious.
So.
And that's the thing too. Like we see a lot, cause we go all over, you know, and see so many students, so many teachers, and even so many different schools, like whether it's public, private, or, you know, even some homeschoolers, you know, so like there's just that whole, even just diversity of, what kind of student walks into your classroom. And I think like for y'all to be able to navigate, you know, 20, however many students each class period, you have so many different personalities and characters that come into your classroom every hour. And I just, it's so dope for me to see you guys just kill it. And students to be, because you don't even know how many graduate, and then how many seeds that you planted into their life, and then maybe come back around and be like, Miss Huffman was the bomb, and because of her, I'm able to be, you know, what I am today, or something like that. Have you ever had some instances like that?
Oh yeah,
I mean, 18 years, you have to have something.
Yes, I have. I have a number of students that I've stayed in contact with. They have my phone number. They text me, or I'm connected with them on social media. And anytime something big happens in their lives, they always let me know. Yeah. And for me, that's what this is about. Yeah. It's not just what I'm doing right now. It's what I'm doing to impact the future. Yeah. And if I can walk out of the classroom every day knowing that I did the very best I could. Yeah. I may not know whether it took or not until 5 years later, a student comes back to me and says, hey, Huffman, I want you to know something. I've decided to become a history teacher. Wow. This just happened this year, by the way. That's awesome. It was more like 3 years, but he comes back to me to see me, and this kid was crazy. Like, I loved him. Yeah. But if you think I'm extra, he's going to tell you he was extra too. Yeah. But like times 10. And I always told him, I said, you're so smart. If you would just focus, you could rule the world. Like, you'd be president.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't want to be president. I said, okay, well, all right, then don't. But do something with your life.
Yeah.
And I remember when he graduated, he says, I'm just going to go work. I said, hey, that's a good thing. Do what you need to do. Do it with pride. But don't shut yourself off from something.
Right.
He came back to see me this year with his girlfriend, who I had the year later. And he said to me, he said, I want you to know something. I said, what's that? He goes, I'm going to UCO. I said, good. I'm like, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to be a history teacher.
Nice.
I about died. Because I said to him, I said, you know that all of the stuff you did to teachers while you were here, that's coming back at you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I'm a little scared. I said, what made you decide to be a teacher, though? And he said, because I had teachers like you and your sister, Miss Lambert. And I said, okay. I said, tell me why. He said, you didn't give up on me. He said, but you also didn't take anything off of me either. He said, you called me out when I needed it.
Yeah.
And he said, I needed that at that time in my life. And he said, you were one of the few people who called me out on when I was trying to lie to you about something or trying to cheat. He said, you didn't accept it. And he said, I realized as I got older, I needed to do that for someone else.
Wow.
And I said to him, I said, you're going to be a good teacher. I know you are, because you understand a lot of the challenges that our kids are going to face. You've been there. I said, but just remember, you have to, keep everything moving in the right direction. I said, you can't get off track and just sit there and talk about whatever you want. Because he was real good about trying to derail.
Of course.
And he said, yeah. He's like, I did that a lot too, didn't I? I said, yeah, you did. We would get off on all kinds of conversations. But again, they needed that. So we did what we needed to at the time. But things like that, that's why I teach.
Yeah, that's awesome. And even because we talk about anti-bullying too, right? And even that struck a chord with you because you said that you were bullied as a student, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's not a 2000 to 2020. That's not new.
Right.
It's just more in the news now, and we're doing more things about it. When I was in high school in the 1990s, because I'm old, I was bullied by a teacher.
Really?
I was bullied by a teacher in front of my entire class because I couldn't do geometry. All right.
Who can?
Here's the thing.
Come on now.
There are some people that will never do geometry. Let's be honest here.
I'm one of them. Yes.
I have a sister who teaches math, and I still can't do it.
Right.
But for a teacher to call me out in front of the class when I was asking for help.
Yeah.
I was the student who would never have talked in class, because I know it's weird now, but I would never have said anything in class because I was so quiet. And for me to raise my hand and say, I have a question, was a huge deal.
Yeah.
And because I knew I was struggling, I was constantly asking questions in that class. I would show up to his class before school and ask questions, and I really tried to understand.
Yeah.
And I know I probably frustrated him because I was asking, because I just didn't understand it.
Right.
And I remember him turning around to the entire class and saying, he was coaches, he was a coach, and he got in his coach stance and he said, Shirey, are you stupid or what? And I remember, first of all, I was so shocked that a teacher would say that.
Right.
But then I was so embarrassed. And I remember just kind of sinking down in the chair a little, like really hoping I would just disappear. But I also remember, because he said my last name, which was Shirey, and he said the word stupid. What do you think became my nickname for the rest of the school year?
Stupid Shirey.
Stupid Shirey.
Yeah.
And that does something to you at 10th grade.
Oh, yeah.
10th grade is a hard year anyway. That's why I don't teach 10th grade, because they need some special people at that grade level. And I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
That did something to me. And, that was in a time period where you didn't tell your parents what happened in class because you didn't want to get in more trouble.
Right.
And I waited years to tell my father that. And my dad was so upset. He said, why didn't you tell me? He said, I would have gone in there and fixed this. And I said, I know. But you know what? It helped me become a better teacher, because now when kids come into my class, I think about what I say to them.
Yeah.
I think about, how do my words impact? Had that not happened to me and I not go through that on my own, maybe I would not be so sympathetic.
Right. Yeah. That's
real.
A lot of people don't know how to take certain negative critique, but somebody else that would have taken that though, like probably would have taken it way left. You know what I'm saying? And so that's just amazing that you were able to take that as a, you know, positive to turn around and use it for your good and for everybody else's impact. So initially you're like the kid, you know, that was talking to you and like, I want to be a history teacher, but I'm going to probably, you know, reap the benefits or repercussions of what I did as a kid. And so for you to turn around and impact students now in a completely positive way, like it's just amazing for some people to take life instances or traumas and turn those triggers into, you know, something that's going to be, you know, beneficial for other people. And so, and that's what, even going back to the whole, you know, shooting thing, it's like, who could have stepped up and said something completely different? What teacher could have saw the signs and said one positive thing instead of that? We just need more people like you and other teachers that are speaking positively into these students.
And I think we need more people thinking along the lines of, I don't want to tear somebody down today.
Yeah.
Like Gen Y, we want to bring people up.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely.
We want to do something to make someone smile instead of tearing them down, you know, and, you know, I don't want to lay the blame at teachers' feet because obviously they're wearing so many hats, but okay. So what about the people that he worked with who have all said on social media, they said, they were asked by the news, they all said, well, he was a loner. Nobody ever talked to him. Okay. Well, why didn't you make a play to talk to him? Why did you allow that to happen?
Right.
Are you really that afraid to talk to someone that you're not willing to extend some friendship?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, this is a cultural thing. This is a pandemic of in America and other countries where we are saying, let's not get in other people's business. Yeah. But yet, then whenever something like this happens, we say, well, why didn't somebody do something? Okay, then step up.
Right.
The buck stops with someone.
You could have been that person. And for all the people that are asking that, like, why didn't somebody do something? Why also are you saying that he was a loner and didn't talk to anybody? If you knew about it, then you could have said something. You know what I'm saying?
And if you're saying that about him, okay, think about your own life. Do you have some people in your life that are like that? So are you going to step up and do it?
Right.
Because honestly, every person knows someone like that. Let's be real. Every person knows someone in their life right now who probably is struggling with something. And if they said one thing, just one thing, they may change the outcome. Yeah. But we're too afraid.
That's huge. That's a whole concept of even what Generation Y is built on. You know, like with my friend that took his life, you know, and I thought that he had everything together, you know, and that's the same thing that I talk about at assemblies. You know, you can take 30 seconds out of your day to say something to somebody, to acknowledge that somebody's there. And that's the biggest thing too, is like we're so geared toward, I need to, you know, focus on whatever my schedule is, move to the next thing, boom, 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 all these things. But it's like, I need to sometimes slow down or put my pride aside and be like, you know what, somebody's actually struggling. You know, how many people can I recognize, even not even just students, but teachers? How many kids do you have coming to your class that you recognize that are that loner? Like, it's not just the student's job to do that, but it's like you can speak into somebody's life. Take 30 seconds out of the day to recognize that another life, another human being, another organism in this world is struggling, is not talking. It's just like if a plant doesn't have a certain type of light, it's in the shadows, it's not receiving that type of, you know, nutrients that it needs, right? You move it into the light, it starts glowing, you know what I'm saying, and growing. So the same thing for y'all, like you and us and you know, Generation Y as, you know, as our organization. Like, we go into so many schools, so many kids come up to us asking for pictures, autographs, like buying merch, all that kind of stuff. But it's always that kid that waits around, that was not talking during the whole assembly, that didn't rush up to take the first picture. But it's that kid that was waiting in the back that waited for everybody to leave to now come up and talk to you and then like bawl their eyes out and tell you what they're going through, because they want to be heard. Right. They want to be seen. They want to be like, okay, somebody actually sees me right now for where I'm at, for who I am, and what I'm really dealing with at this moment. And so I think that whole concept of just acknowledging somebody, because if you can acknowledge somebody and meet them where they're at, you start to understand them, right? And that's the whole thing that I even talk about too, is like, I feel like understanding is a deeper form of love.
Right.
Right. So there's love. You can love anything. I can love chocolate for how it is, but whatever it is, but if I don't know where it came from and all it took to get into this wonderful packaged thing that's so delicious, right? Yes. But if I cannot fully understand that, I can't fully love chocolate, right? So like the same thing, I cannot fully love somebody, a student, a friend, a relationship, anything until I know where they come from or where they're at and what they're dealing with right there.
And you have to be willing to listen.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the things I've noticed the most this year.
Yeah.
Is I can be talking to students and they can look at me like they're listening, but I know the way they're looking at me, they're not listening to me.
Right.
And, you know, it's one thing for curriculum, but when someone is struggling and they're trying to tell you something and you do that, that's devastating.
Right.
That's devastating, because then they don't feel as though they are worth anything.
Yeah.
And as we've noticed in the past month, year, 2 years, when someone does not feel like they are worth something, they will go to whatever needs they need to in order to be heard.
I wonder if that's why like our mental health is struggling so much, because we're taking our worth out of individuals, you know, because not only like with the whole not only with the whole thing of, you know, the pandemic, but even Oklahoma, you know, in 2017, we jumped to the third leading state in the nation for teen suicide. Right. So like, and as of 2020, we went down to top 6, which is, I mean, we made progress a little bit, but even that concept, I feel like there's so many people that are, you know, taking away the worth out of people because we want and expect so much more out of them. But we're expecting what we want it to look like.
Right.
We don't expect what that individual person can produce on their own.
Right.
We just want them to be who we want to copy and paste them to look like and achieve in life. But like that's so limiting to people, and then that eliminates their worth.
Yeah.
You know, so like I think that's why we're probably dealing with a huge mental health issue, is because we're eliminating worth and the potential that people have within them as individuals. And so I don't know. That was a rant. I'm sorry.
No,
but,
you're good. You're good. No, I'm with you. I mean, I had parents much like yours where my dad said, you know, I don't care what you do with your life. I just want you to be successful and to feel like you are doing what you feel you need to do.
Yeah.
And so I never was pushed to do anything that I didn't want to, but he and my mom supported us in everything that we tried.
Yeah.
And to have that kind of support allowed me to, you know, I started college as a business major thinking I was going to go change the business world. And 3 days into college said, oh no. And I remember calling home and saying, hey, by the way, I've changed my major to education and I'm going to be a teacher. And I remember thinking, oh, they're going to be so mad. And my dad was like, oh, I just wondered how long it was going to take you. But
really?
He said, I didn't want to tell you what to do.
That's hilarious.
And I thought to myself, no, that's a good dad right there.
Definitely, yeah.
Because he knew what I was struggling with. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. But instead of telling me you need to do this, which, let's be honest, you tell a teenager they have to do something.
Right.
They're going to go the other direction.
Rebel for sure.
He let me find my way, find my path. And then when I did find it and I told him, he said, I support you. I support you for what you want to do. And he and my mother were there every step of the way, cheering myself, my sister on.
Yeah.
You know, that has made all the difference in my life.
Yeah.
So if we as a society can start doing that, you know, I have tons of students that come into my class that are being told they have to go to college. They don't have to go to college.
Right.
Do they need to be productive members of society? Absolutely.
Right.
But, you know, we have Francis Tuttle in this state that does a phenomenal job.
Definitely.
Of training kids in a variety of things.
Yeah.
And when they walk out the door, those kids are making more money than I am.
Yeah.
And they're certified when they graduate.
Yep.
Why is that such a stigma to send them to a trade school as opposed to a college?
And then send them off with debt.
Yeah.
Right.
When the state of Oklahoma, okay, plug in here, folks. The state of Oklahoma will pay for your kid to go to Francis Tuttle until the age of 21 for free. Parents, that is free money.
That's crazy.
You're not paying for that.
Yeah.
I mean, tax money is paying for that. So in a sense, everybody is paying for it.
Right.
But you need plumbers. You need electricians. You need computer people. I mean, they do all kinds of things out there.
Definitely.
So why are we stigmatizing that? You know?
Right. Like it's lower or something.
Yeah. Okay, perception, folks. What is your perception? Are you wanting to do what's best for the people in your life? Or are you wanting to keep your pride and your hubris on the forefront and say, look at what we're doing?
Definitely.
Okay, well, if your kid comes home at semester and says, I'm not going back to college, how are you going to spin that on social media without making your kid feel like dirt?
Definitely. I think that if you just give the options to students and let them choose whatever they want, you're giving them amazing options. Who cares? As long as they are trying to fulfill what they feel like they can be in society.
You're going to have a happier kid.
Happier. Yes. And happiness is huge. And I feel like people are not they're not able to successfully find that because they're so forced to find some other image or other perception that somebody else is trying to put on them. And so I think that, being able to just give them the resources and give them the option, like they're going to end up finding, what they want. They're going to end up finding a successful path if they can just have the options. And there's so many people who are refused those options, and we see that in a lot of schools that we go to. Like, we go to lower income schools, we go to higher income schools, we go to rural town schools that don't have anything, just cattle, no Wi-Fi, no nothing,
Yeah.
And so and they don't even know a lot of the options that are out there. Yeah. I know a student that is in Edmond that has millions of followers on YouTube, making more money than I could ever imagine as a 17-year-old.
Yep.
And he found his way on YouTube. Are you kidding? Like, these kids are way more smarter than we could think if they could just have all these options that they, at their disposal. And so, so I really appreciate you coming through to this podcast. Is there one last thing that you want to leave these people with that is geared toward purpose or anything just to fulfill a student? You can look in the camera and then tell that kid,
Honestly, guys, what I want to tell you is it doesn't matter what anybody else wants you to do. It comes down to what is your purpose? What is it that you want to do with your life? And if you can find somebody to talk to bounce ideas off of, then do that. Don't just hit the wall or have a door shut in your face and stop there. That's not how the world works. You've got to keep plugging and chugging. You got to keep going for what you want. So don't take the first rejection and say, well, I'm done. Get out there, do what you need to do, and keep going because there's always another door to open.
That's good. And that's coming from Miss Teacher of the Year 2021-2022, Miss Jackie Huffman. One more time, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming through.
Thank you for letting me come.
You are amazing, and thanks for putting up with all of our stuff.
You guys know I love you.
Yes, you're amazing. And follow her. Where can they follow you at?
I am on Instagram.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't know what my handle is.
You don't know what your handle is?
Let me look it up.
You're this famous Teacher of the Year. You got to know what your handle is.
It's Live Life Boldly 001.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much once again for coming through. Be sure to follow anything, subscribe, share this podcast if it touched you or anything like that, and help Jackie's story get out there to all the people out there. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Generation Y podcast. We'll see you next time.